we were saying the same thing about the Denver Nuggets a season ago. Now, the Nuggets were a disappointment in the playoffs. There were times even in the regular season where it felt like they were coasting, getting ready for the playoffs. Felt like they turned it on at moments, and then you watch them completely flame out against the Timberwolves and blow a 20-something point lead, whatever the hell it was, 20-point lead.
Yep.
And you look around and go, okay, this is a team that just won a title. I expect them to be aggressive this offseason. I expect Boston to mostly retain the roster they have and just overpay for everybody they have and just go over the second apron and luxury taxes and all the things they have to do. I think when it's all said and done, we're looking at Nuggets Celtics in the NBA Finals next year, and there's a chance for that multiple years down the road. And that is an NBA Finals that I really want to see because the Mavs looked overmatched, overworked. They just had nothing to compete with Boston whatsoever in this. The Nuggets, with a big like Nikola Jokic, would have given Boston fits, especially with Kristaps Porzingis out. So we missed out on a great opportunity to really see the matchup of what I think is the two best teams in the NBA. But we do have to keep in mind, the East, there's a reason why Boston is such a heavy favorite to win the East, because the gap between them and everybody else is a lot wider than where it is with the Denver Nuggets, with teams like Minnesota and OKC, who are young, talented, and they're really trying to fight their way up there too.
Yeah, you look at Denver, and I am not sure yet if I'm willing to go that far. This is why. You just look at Denver and the pieces that they lost in Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, and just the fact that they've had to roll out Reggie Jackson, who's not that good, and they had to roll out Peyton Watson, who's still developing, and he's a very young player. Now you've got KCP, who's going to go into free agency, and there's going to be probably 10 teams that want to pay KCP, including the Lakers, would love to have him back. He was on that championship team in 2020. So Denver has to pay him, or they're going to lose out on him, and there's no one else that they can pay based on their cap situation. So they're really in a tough financial spot, and they're thin. And we saw that when Jamal Murray is not completely healthy as a closer, that it's difficult for them to be able to get their own offense going. Same thing is true for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, you've got Karl Anthony Towns, who you're hoping is your second offensive option, but really he takes himself out of games by his fouling, by his emotions, and at the end of the day, you're getting some meaningful minutes out of Mike Conley, just like you did with Drew Holiday. I kind of put them in the same category in terms of scoring. They can score, but that's not their primary role. But really, a lot of that just falls on Anthony Edwards. And if you're a one-dimensional offense, that's extremely difficult, which is why Kyrie and Luka, when they were firing on all cylinders, were able to beat teams like Oklahoma City and teams like Minnesota. So I'm not saying that it's the Mavs to lose, because I don't think so. I just have no clue in the West who it's going to be, because we still have free agency in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
And the decision from LeBron James is looming. He could very easily go to Dallas on a vet minimum or to Phoenix for a vet minimum. And wherever he decides to go, the axis of the earth spins on him. If he even goes back to L.A. and they find out a way to get KCP and J.J. Redick's a serviceable coach, they could find themselves in the mix at the top of the West.
Let's clarify that for people, because there should be no consideration for Russell Wilson as comeback player of the year this year, because he's not coming back from anything other than having a bad relationship with his coach. Geno Smith, that's cool that he won. Reality of it is, what's the comeback? No, he just got to start that year and played well. That's all that it came down to. Now, if you had most improved player like the NBA does, okay, that's a different story for somebody like Geno Smith. And if Russell Wilson has a great year, you could say that he was the most improved player this year. But comeback player of the year should be left for guys that get off their front lawn like Joe Flacco and come back and play the way that he did, or DeMar Hamlin, who literally came back from death.
It's literally like in the name, comeback.
Right.
It's not like come up. It's not revival. It's not what we saw from Geno Smith or coming out of retirement and playing meaningful football games. You can't give it to Deshaun Watson. Post him sitting out a year for the Houston Texans. You shouldn't give it to Joe Flacco over DeMar Hamlin, who was leading, like the leader in the clubhouse the entire year, which we all had just assumed. We didn't even play it.
He was minus like 10,000
because you're like, oh, I mean, he's obviously going to win it. He's obviously, and then he just stopped playing games. They had him. They were giving him like DNPs. He's sitting in street clothes. And then things started to kind of like shake out to a place where we didn't know who deserved it. And that's where we're at right now. Joe Burrow's plus 200. Aaron Rodgers is plus 150. Kirk Cousins plus 500. I like Kirk Cousins at plus 500. I feel like if that offense is not a mess and he's slinging the rock around, he should win it.
The only one I'd consider besides that would be Anthony Richardson at 7-1, because that could be a similar situation where the offense just looks good with him, and he's out there looking like he did the first 5 games of the season last year.
Looking like a snack?
Yeah, looking like a snack, out there just running over guys, not sliding, lowering his shoulder, just out there looking like an MVP. There's this weird bias against Kirk Cousins. I think that's the only thing.
It's the anti-COVID stuff.
I just think, but before that too, and maybe just because I heard it more because when he was in Washington, that was the case, and talking about how much money he could have gotten if they had kept him and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And the reality of it is he's a really good quarterback, but people always love to poke holes in his game and the type of quarterback that he is. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's a very, very good quarterback that gets the most out of the weapons that he has around him. He broke pretty much every offensive record that they had in Washington when he was there. So you got to give the guy some kind of credit for it. But I just wonder if some people will look at it and say, yeah, but he's got a lot of weapons around him, so, and then go to somebody like Anthony Richardson. I think the only thing that gives Anthony Richardson a little bit of an advantage, too, is we haven't seen a lot of him. So if he comes back and just kind of bursts onto the scene and it's Lamar Jackson his first year starting, where you see similar types of
MVP
performances.
Quality.
Yeah, then you're going, you got to give it to him. And that's why 7-1 especially makes, I think, that a little bit more. But, Aaron Rodgers, are people then going to use stuff Aaron Rodgers says against him when they're voting?
49ers to win the NFC. I know that they have big-time injury regression that's coming. That's definitely a possibility. But if they keep Deebo Samuel and they're fully healthy and they keep Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall does what we imagine, what some of the smart people who evaluate talent imagine, Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, that offensive line holds up, George Kittle, we get a better bounce-back year from George Kittle. Who else is competing with the Niners? I mean, you can say maybe it's the Lions. You can say, maybe it's the Green Bay Packers because both of those teams had huge leads on the Niners last postseason.
Eagles,
I do not believe in them.
Out on the Eagles.
I know that James Coe does believe, but as somebody who's a Dallas Cowboy fan, I know I know what Kellen Moore is, and it's brutal. Nobody makes a mediocre quarterback look worse than Kellen Moore. So I think I'm out on the Eagles right now. But so for me, that's the bet that I make. There's no other bets that I would take. Maybe like a Christian McCaffrey rushing yard leader. Something like that. But in terms of automatically, this is what I bet, it's San Francisco to win the NFC.
And if that team stays healthy, then clearly they can still get back to the Super Bowl. They can win the NFC. I don't think there's any question that that's a smart bet. Another one I'd throw out there is Brock Purdy over on passing yards. It's 3,900 and a half. He threw for 4,200 last year. And if those receivers stay healthy in San Francisco, these are guys that are looking to get paid. These are guys that are looking to make a statement, and you've got a quarterback that will certainly want to get them the football, and it's an offense that gets very, very creative, and they put Brock Purdy in position to succeed. They put him in spots where he can make the throws that they know that he can make, especially with a backfield that's got weapons, specifically Christian McCaffrey, that can do 1,000 things as a receiver, which adds to more yards, more completions for Brock Purdy right out of the backfield. But also you have to respect the run game in San Francisco because of what McCaffrey can do there too. So Brock Purdy has shown us that he's a quarterback that can put up serious numbers in the pass game. So I'd also take the over 3,900 passing yards for him.